how was the accent came from? Where did it came from?
So I'm originally from South Africa, from Cape Town, and I moved to Israel when I was a kid, when I was 5 years old. And my parents are South African, so we speak English at home. And I was able to maintain the accent, which is a privilege.
Yeah, definitely. Prior to F2, give a bit of a context. What have you done, and how did you progress?
Sure. So as I said, so I came from South Africa and we moved to Ramat Gan, which is a pretty cool move from Cape Town to Ramat Gan. I always say that. Then I served about 6 years in the army in the special forces in a unit called Sayert Matkal. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that. That's also where I met my co-founder, Elon. After serving there for a couple of years, I went to study business at Reichman University, or IDC, better known. Also spent some time at USC in Los Angeles. And then, so during my studies, I did a bunch of non-profit activities, mainly in advocacy for Israel around the world. And then during my studies, also worked for a business intelligence company. And towards the end of my studies, when I got back from the exchange program, I was thinking about what my next steps should be, because I had kind of a semester that I had to fill out. And I started interviewing for a couple of different places, and I reached out to Johnny Sachs, the managing partner at F2. Great timing. And I offered him to kind of join and kind of do 3 months of an internship. And then after a few chats, and I persuaded him to give me a chance, I started working there. And I just stayed there for like 4 years, did a bunch of roles, analyst, associate, principal. I led the Junction, which is the in-house accelerator by F2. Was an amazing period, and that's also where I gained most of my experience when it comes to venture capital and startups. 2018, by the way, that was kind of the first boom in the crypto and blockchain industry. I was kind of spearheading those activities at the fund, and we invested in a company called Portus that was later acquired by Shapeshift, and that was like my real first exposure to crypto and Web3. And then the last year at F2, that's when we had that kind of Web3 rebranding. So it was blockchain, crypto, then it was Web3, and the Web3 rebranding, especially around NFTs, was kind of a very interesting topic for me. I could see lots of use cases, and I kind of went down the rabbit hole in that one. And that's, I would say, the beginning of the journey at Tres. Was actually at F2 looking at those areas. And then, as I said, the beginning of the year, Elon, my co-founder, and myself, we co-founded Tres, and that's what we've been doing for the past 14 months.
Yeah, in your Twitter profile, your pinned tweet is about your unusual way of how you raised your seed round. I think it will be very beneficial to start off and give even more context about Tres and how did you get along and started out everything. So just in a nutshell, you walk us through the journey of how did you manage to raise the first round.
Yeah, sure. So you have to remember it was the beginning of 2022. So it was before the market started cooling down, and we moved from a bull to a bear market. At that time, I was thinking about my next steps in my career. And also Elon, who previously was a CTO and co-founder at a company called Sam Seamless Network, which is a pretty well-known cybersecurity company that raised tens of millions of dollars in revenue, thinking about his next steps. I came, as I said, with some background from the Web3 and crypto space, and I could see what companies in the space were struggling with. Also, angel invested in a few companies in the space. And Elon, during the years, was very intrigued by the crypto and blockchain industry, participated in a few DAOs and IDOs, and of course, built a few projects on his own. And when we started talking, it was very clear to us that our goal is to build a company in the Web3 space, B2B enterprise-grade software solution that is heavy on data. And we started looking into that space, and talking to different companies, we saw there was a really interesting gap when it comes to finance and treasury management. And the reason is that CFOs in that space usually were not crypto native. So for them to kind of get a grip of what's happening inside their financial parameter, okay? And I'm just gonna talk about what I mean when I say financial parameter. If you think about cybersecurity, as a company, you have a bunch of endpoints, and you have kind of a security parameter which involves all your endpoints and everything that's happening inside your network. That is also like the equivalent of your financial parameter when you have a bunch of different wallets and exchanges and smart contracts where you store value. Okay, so for you to understand what's happening inside your financial parameter, it's very, very difficult. And if you aren't crypto native and you don't understand what's happening, what's DeFi, and what are different blockchains, you don't understand the context of transactions, if there's no real, I would say, very clear regulation around how to look at different transactions, and there's no software to help you aggregate all the data, what eventually happens is that you have lots of data silos and everything's managed on spreadsheets and prone to human error, which is a very, very dangerous thing when it comes to crypto. And we've seen what happens when these things are managed properly. You can see Celsius, you can see FTX, you can see 3 Hours, you can see a bunch of different use cases where these things weren't managed properly. So what we set out to build is a platform that will help you manage all your financials around that. We talked to a bunch of companies and we saw there was a real need. And then we started talking to a bunch of investors. And at the time, because I worked at a VC and I kind of know how investors think and how they look at new companies, we decided not to build a deck, okay, a presentation of explaining what we're actually doing in the company, and we decided to show the value itself. So what we did is we built Figma that demonstrates the value and how the platform will look. And while showing and demoing the product and explaining why this is important and how this works, I think that's what really caught the eyes of investors. And we're very fortunate to add both F2, where I worked before, and Boldstart, who led the round very early on as investors. And then, of course, as you know, when it comes to fundraising, once you have the lead and the kind of the anchor of the round, everyone starts to jump in. So we had lots of investors trying to come in, and we're very fortunate to add Newform Capital, Kinetic, Alchemy Ventures, Circle Ventures, Moonpay Ventures, amazing angels like the founders of Fireblocks and Chainalysis. So we have kind of really the most prominent figures in the blockchain crypto industry join our cap table and bring lots of value as we went along.
So you're talking about not going the I would say traditional way of, all right, let's build a deck and then pitch it. Let's straight off build a Figma kind of MVP, even not an MVP, but just something to show off to the investors. I wanna go back, even one step back, and talk about the validation of the actual need. And you mentioned that you find that gap and that need of CFOs that needs more transparency and something that will be more accessible and convenient for them to access all the data of the treasury management. Walk us through that validation phase. Was it a market insight that you gained during the years of you seeing a lot of companies in F2? Was it something else? How exactly came up with the problem, and why did you think you are the right ones to solve that specific problem?
Sure. Okay, so that's a bunch of questions. I'm going to try and answer them all. First of all, I'm just going to start out with the saying that Elon, my co-founder, said at the beginning of the journey. He said, I'm never building a cybersecurity product again. And the reason is selling to CISOs or CIOs, which is the person who's in charge of security inside the organization, is super difficult because everyone's trying to pitch them, everyone is trying to sell to them, and it's very difficult to interact with them. The exact opposite is talking to finance teams and CFOs inside organizations. They are so willing to help. They are so willing to share their challenges and problems. They are willing to open up on a Zoom call and share screen of how they manage the data today, okay? So very quickly, we were able to talk to a bunch of companies in the space, and companies that in our eyes were kind of repeatable use cases, okay? So if you meet one company in the space, we knew that if these guys are leading the market and they are behaving this way, and this is the way they are managing the data, it's pretty clear that other companies that are competing with them are managing it the same way.
So it was less problem-led or vertical-led. Perhaps it was more like avatar-led, I would say, because you reverse engineered who would be the guys that are more approachable, and you kind of, okay, all right, CFOs, let's focus on them, which problems we can solve. That was kind of the process.
Yes, it was like, okay, what is actually happening on the blockchain? What can you use the blockchain for? And then we can see that someone has to manage the financials. Okay, let's look at finance teams and see how they are doing. Okay, clearly there's a problem here. Let's now try and crystallize what the problem is and how we can solve it. And then slowly but surely we were able to build out, and we had a thesis in that space already, right? Now we just had to validate it. And that's what we did. And of course, by the way, one of the tips I can give the listeners is that venture capital firms have a portfolio of companies. Okay, most of them, or at least some of them, can be potential customers. Okay, one of the best ways, and something I always use when talking to investors, is like saying, "Hey, listen, for you to know if what we are building is actually worthwhile and if you should invest in us, why don't you send over one of your portfolio companies to test our product?" Okay, because if they give you a green light, you should invest. And if they give you a green light that means they can work with us, we feel that you are good investors to introduce us to a customer, we'll probably be more willing to take your money. Okay, so this is a win-win situation.
There is less
or even a win-win-win.
They just want to.
Exactly. So that's something we did from the get-go. We saw which investors were investing in which companies, and then we could approach them and say, "Hey, why don't you introduce us to 2 of your companies?" And if they tell you that the problem is real, then they are kind of an unbiased, not even unbiased, they're actually biased towards you. And if they are saying it's what we are building is interesting and it's worthwhile investing in, that's the best validation you can get. I can say that because I was a former investor. If a portfolio company of mine would send a company to me and say, "Hey, listen, I'm using their product. It's actually pretty cool. This is what I'm using it for." That's like one of the best references you can get. So if you can use that to gain more traction and more customers, that's one of the best ways to do so. And we use it till this day, by the
way. From the perspective and from one that early on got in both sides of the equation, I would say, which other insights or perspectives did you gain that you think helped you out during the early stages that you can share for startup founders in early stages?
Sure. I think that optimizing for the right partner and not for the best terms is super important. If you get diluted by another 2-3%, it's worthwhile if you will be working with an investor that you truly feel comfortable with. Okay, the chemistry with your investor and with your board members is super important, and it's actually crucial to the success of the company. Okay, so you should be super. You should really look out for who you're going to be adding to the cap table and who you're going to be working with. So that is something I would definitely think about. And when, like, even today, when we're like post-seed and we are post-revenue with tens of customers and things are looking well on our side, we are already talking to different investors about our next round because we're starting to build a relationship. And during building a relationship, you can understand who are the people you want to work with and who are the people you don't want to work with. Who are the people that are already bringing value on an interest in building a relationship, and who are the ones that are just waiting for you to start raising so they can kind of dip their toes in the water and then say, "Okay, I'm going to invest in you." We are believers of long-term relationships, and it's something that even if you aren't raising at the moment, go meet investors, go talk to them, go validate the idea with them. Don't expose too much, okay? Because you don't want to kind of burn yourself in front of them, but try and understand how to manage the relationship correctly. As a former investor, I had those insights, so it was easier for me to manage that and manage the relationship side of things.
What do you mean by saying not expose too much?
So you don't want to get and meet a VC and pitch your idea without validating it, because what happens what happens behind the scenes is that investor goes back to his internal CRM, adds your name of the company and what you do, and he marks you as relevant or not relevant. Okay, now the idea you just pitched him will probably change 1,000 times. Okay, the problem is that you kind of missed the chance. Okay, so if you get back to him after a month, he'll probably say to you, "Well, you're still doing that XYZ. Okay, I don't think I'm going to invest in this. It's a waste of time." But you've already crystallized the messaging and the product and the value proposition, and you have much more traction. But still, he remembers you from that specific meeting. So never come. I mean, if you aren't ready to pitch, it's always should be like, I'm thinking of this idea, maybe doing that, maybe doing this. Why don't you connect me to one of your companies, etc. Build out the relationship, and only when you feel very comfortable, that's when you probably go out and pitch and be like, okay, this is what we are building, this is the market, this is the problem solution team, etc.
You talked about crystallizing the messaging, and that's something that is NFX, for instance, are talking about not product market fit, but product promise market fit. And basically, it's something that, back then, from my own experience in online businesses, not necessarily startups, it's something that you're always doing as an entrepreneur. You're validating first the actual need, and then you're selling it. And it's something that they're advising you to do also. Is it something that you applied, or do you think it's not necessarily the right way to go, and it all obviously depends on the startup, and you had enough market insights, or you had enough people to talk to and validate, and you thought it's redundant?
I think that maybe it's a bit controversial, but there are two messaging tactics. There's a messaging for your customers, messaging for investors. Two different types of messaging. Okay, if they are the same, great, you are lucky. Most of the time they aren't the same. What you pitch to investors and what you pitch to customers will most probably be different.
All right, can you elaborate about the differences? And I'm talking more about the user part of the messaging. But can you elaborate about the differences, and how should the founder should approach each one of them?
Sure. So when you talk to a customer, your messaging has to be on the point and kind of hitting the nail on the head in terms of the value proposition and the pain, right? I have a paid aggregating data. Our solution aggregates data. An example, okay? If you go to a VC and say to him, I'm building a company that aggregates data, he's going to tell you to piss off and go look for a different investor.
Yeah.
When you pitch to a VC, you pitch a larger vision, right? So let's take the aggregate data and turn it into a VC pitch. We are a data layer for XYZ, okay? Now, essentially, your product is doing the same, but for a VC who's looking for a 100x investment and a unicorn, you have to show him the vision, how this can be a huge company. When you talk to the customer, he doesn't give a shit if you want to build a huge company. He needs someone to solve his immediate pain, which is, how do I get the data into my ERP system? Okay, two different messaging tactics, same product, same team.
And if you're about to start off with one thing, obviously it will start off with actually solving something before pitching to any investor. You want to verify and validate, I would say, the need, the actual need for the problem. Something that I'm hearing constantly, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, is regarding the people that are trying to validate and talk with the users, but maybe they're doing it wrong, which is something I wanna get your thought on, of how to actually talk with the customers, and what are the common mistakes that you're seeing with people trying to validate their own idea, but ends up hearing just compliments or not actual things that they can actually rely on, I would say.
Yeah. Man, I've been through that. I've got, listen to this story, okay? I think middle of August, that was like 6 months after we started working already. We had a product out there since May, okay? Almost 2.5 months in the market with a product that we think we can sell. And I phoned Elon, my co-founder, and I said to him, listen, man, I'm not selling. I'm like, no one wants to buy our product. We did everything they asked for, and we can't sell the product. What is going on? And long story short, after 2 weeks, we closed our first 3 customers. Nothing really changed. And we were actually thinking of pivoting to a different idea. So first thing is patience, okay? You think, many times I'll say about myself, okay? We think that we are the center of the world and everything has to evolve around us. We have to sell the product right now. Our customers, maybe even if we are like the number one need, they have so many things happening inside the business, and you are a vendor trying to sell them something, okay? You are 100% not their top priority, no matter what, okay? So it's also, at least at the beginning, when your product is really not 100% complete, that the features are not 100% complete, it's about patience and building a relationship and just understanding how to nail it. Okay, so it's just like an anecdote. Like, you shouldn't feel bad if it's difficult to sell at the beginning.
What? Sorry?
Sorry?
Mentioned understand too.
No, I'm saying you just need to kind of take the time to talk to customers and keep iterating on the product. Okay. Now, when you think about how to run the whole process of discovery with customers, it's very difficult. Okay, because you have to come unbiased and have open questions and not closed questions. Like, is this feature valuable for you or not? Okay. Like, you have to be super accurate on what you ask and try not to guide them towards the answer you want. Number one. Number two, find people that will be critical when they look at your solution. Okay, if you go to a friend of yours, most likely that he'll be saying, man, this is great. Okay, and the best thing you can do is, after working with a potential lead or design partner after time, trying to get them to sign some kind of document. It's an LOI or even an NDA, okay? Because that is some kind of engagement that will require investment on his side. Why does investment on his side? He'll have to go to his legal team and get him to sign it. And that will show some kind of, if they're actually serious about what you're building, or if it's just some kind of schmooze that they are running, okay? Because if they're willing to take the document, go to the legal team, get it signed, that means that they actually care about what you're building, okay? I've said, you know what, listen, I'm actually super overloaded with work, can't really do this at the moment. It's a negative signal. Probably you haven't really found a pain that is big enough, and you're building some kind of vitamin and not a painkiller.
A lot of great insights that you talked about. I wanna talk about and that's also something that constantly people are talking about in the Web3 space. Usually in startup, you need to validate and start off with usually a geographical area to focus on. And in Web3, sometimes it seems, and in tech in general, but in Web3, it seems that the narrative is even broader, and it's much more, I would say, not geographically dependent or relevant in terms of where should we start, where should we market first. Do you think it's a true statement, or perhaps you should start off with a specific market and specific?
No, I mean, of course, you should think about the pain. Like, in my opinion, geography in the Web3 world has no meaning. Okay, the problems that today we solve for Israeli companies in the space, and Asian companies in the space, and European and US-based companies in the space, same problems. Okay, 100% the same problems. Yeah. Because it's such a it's a layer that even regulators don't really know what to do yet. Okay, all over the world, the pains are pretty similar. It's not like, even if there are like accounting or tax rules, I don't think I even explained what we do. Thinking about now, but I'm saying, even if you have like different accounting and tax rules, the process of getting all the data into one place, making sense out of it, is the same all over.
So you mentioned quite briefly, to be honest, and I do agree with what you just mentioned. You kind of briefly walked us through and then talked about what you're exactly doing and how you're leveraging the data and making it accessible to CFOs. Could you expand a bit more about what you're currently doing and how you're expanding? Because I'm constantly, since I first contacted you, seeing constant update and things that you're doing. So first of all, keep up with the great job and integrating and doing stuff. And I think it will be valuable and interesting to the audience to hear about what you're doing too. Sure.
So, like, as a vision, what we are doing is we're building a Web3 financial data lake. Okay, we're aggregating all the data from all the blockchains and all the CFI platforms into one place, and we'll give it financial context. Okay, in terms of
platforms.
Sorry.
Only from the CFI platforms you're aggregating data from?
No. On-chain and off-chain.
All right.
Yes. Anything that's crypto, Web3, blockchain related, we bring in, okay, into our data lake, and then we're able to give it financial context for accounting, reporting, and audit, okay? So if we work with a customer, they'll give us the wallet addresses of their wallets and an API read only for their exchanges. And they have to, and that's it. all they need to do, we put in all the data, and then we open up an account for them that shows them all the data about what's happening inside their financial parameter, as I said earlier. So you can see your risk exposure. You can see all your transactions with financial context. You can label them for accounting purposes. You can integrate into your ERP, like QuickBooks, Xero, NetSuite, and you can reconcile all your transactions. You can build reports for audit, okay, and for internal reporting. So think about all the back office activities and requirements of a company, a Web2 company. It applies to Web3 companies. It's very difficult for them to manage that because there are so many silos of data. We aggregate everything into one platform. You can interact with our interface, or you can consume everything through an API also, by the way. So that is essentially what we're doing. You can think about it as a Web3 platform for accounting, audit, and reporting, and all your back office operations.
And currently we're seeing and we're expecting to see more and more on-chain activity, and we've seen startups, and I'm talked with Eyal, he's the founder of DeepDAO, and they are aggregating all the on-chain data of DAOs, and they're the go-to place for DAOs. And we are seeing more and more, and I gave him that example of Addressable, which are doing aggregating data too and leveraging it to marketing. And I think, and we, as I've started to say, we're expecting to see more and more on-chain activity, and Addressable is another example for that. So if I'm talking about the future that we are heading to, which are the use cases and the scenarios do you think we'll see of leveraging that on-chain data for businesses?
For businesses,
yeah.
I think, I mean, I can only talk for what we are doing at the moment. Okay, if I think about our customer base today is mostly Web3 native companies. Okay, and my belief, and it might be a bit controversial for different crypto fanatics, is that there will not be a world that's blockchain only. I see a world that is much more hybrid. Okay, hybrid without even knowing that blockchain is enabling anything behind the scenes. So you'll have, like, you pay with Apple Pay, you'll be able to pay with the USDC with your phone. You'll be able to move stable coins from place to place. I'll just give you a very brief example of how we are using crypto at the moment. Okay, not so long ago, we issued two invoices to two of our customers. One is paying us with USD, one is paying us with USDC. The company paying us with USD, it took us 2 weeks to get the money through the banks that aren't working, this bank, that bank. The other company we sent an invoice to, within 120 seconds, he sent me on Slack the hash of the transaction, and the money was in my wallet. Okay, that is the beauty of the blockchain. That is the beauty, in my opinion, of stablecoins. Okay, if I take another step forward, once you start interacting with crypto, I think DeFi is a super interesting space where you can generate really good yields by contributing to liquidity. And I think those are the two places where we'll see the most uptick. What I'm very excited about is how you can tokenize kind of real life assets. I'm not talking about real estate, more about stocks, okay? And how we can stop trading in the stock market using different tokens, and how we can democratize those activities to people that don't have access to those activities at the moment. So that's where I see the world going. It's still early to say, but I think that stable coins will be, or even are already, kind of leading the way into the mass adoption that everyone is craving for.
You think stablecoins will take over CBDCs? And obviously, it's very no one knows, but just from your own point of view. And we're talking. Let's try to focus if we're talking about geography, because it really matters in that case. If we're talking about China or the US or Israel, so let's generally speak about Israel, for instance.
In terms of stablecoins.
In terms of the futures and how we will see the mass adoption. You're talking.
I don't know about Israel. I mean, if you think about Israel, we have a huge part of the population is still using cash.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a bit difficult to look at Israel. I do believe that stable coins will become a very relevant method of transacting. Okay, B2B, B2C, like peer-to-peer. and I think that will happen. It's still a problem with regulations and how the government perceives these things. I think until there is no kind of standard that is worldwide around how to look at crypto assets, how to look at stable coins, how to look at DeFi, it can be very difficult to gain mass adoption. But the reason I'm saying stablecoins is because regulatory-wise, it feels to me like the easiest thing to regulate, right? Because it's supposed to be one-to-one. If you look at the Circle, even though they had the whole blow up with SVB, but it already rebound, right? Then if you saw it, it's almost back to it's almost back to one-to-one. So I think that, by the way, is a great that's great evidence to the power of stablecoins. I'm very bullish on stablecoins and their role in mass adoption.
If we will try to leave just for a minute the regulatory difficulties, just for a minute aside, what do you think besides that prevents us, and what can we proactively, I would say, do as entrepreneurs to solve? And you mentioned currently the vast majority of your customers are Web3 native. What can we do to actually bridge that gap and onboard more and more Web2 companies in general? Is it, we're constantly hearing about the UX, but something more?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't. It's such a cliche, right? Talking about the UX. Exactly. I think there's also some kind of psychology that has to play a role here. Of there's so much bad context when you talk about crypto and blockchain, fraud and the branding. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, by the way, Web2 was great, but then was very like the context was very NFT-ish, right? So there's something like when I talk to my parents today, they I think they get a bit more, but when I talk to my wife's parents, for example, about crypto, they're like, man, like even stock market is still a bit scary to some of them. So I think that maybe taking the stable coin and not talking even about the fact that there's blockchain behind the scenes, okay? And it goes back to UX, of course, but I think that is part of it. I think So Rare, the French company, is doing a great job in that. When you think about the Fantasy League product that they have behind the scenes, it's NFTs, it's blockchain, but as a user, you have no idea that that's actually what's happening. So that's I don't have a good enough answer. I don't know how this will proceed. But when you interact with crypto and you see the speed and the easiness of paying with USDC, you're like, how is this not the standard? How? I mean, thinking about let's talk about SVB and what's happening at the moment. Okay. We were lucky enough to get our money out of SVB, okay? You know how stressful that was to go into the SVB website, which is supposed to be like a top-tier bank for startups, pushing in IBAN, Swerved, all that stuff, clicking on wire the funds, and then sitting and refreshing and waiting to see if the funds actually went through. It's crazy. And I had to pay a fee for that, okay? Because I moved a lot of money. Thinking about doing it with USDC, put in the wallet address, click, gone. You know what? I might even not encounter the problem for why I even move the funds, right? Because it's decentralized or whatever. So that is like the when you actually experience that and you feel it, like it's crazy to me how this isn't the standard today.
But the thing is, and we're seeing that pattern constantly happens, regardless of whether it's the SVB case or any other case. It's only the extreme scenarios that people are trying to, and adopting it as the last option. And we've seen it we're seeing it with a lot of countries that are seeing hyperinflation, and we're seeing it. We saw it in the war with Ukraine and Russia. We're seeing it happens again and again. And
I mean, you can even think about the invention of Bitcoin. When did that happen? When the crash in 2008, 2009, right? That's when Bitcoin was invented. So yes, I think that there are a lot of smart people and lots of companies in the space, and I just hope that the good people keep building and build things that actually bring value, and they just build all kinds of tokens for the sake of building tokens and all that stuff, and actually build infrastructure and help the world with adopting crypto and blockchain as a technology that actually brings value to the world. By the way, I talked to some of my friends at Circle. They were in Asia not long ago, and they said the adoption of crypto in Asia is amazing.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe when you think about Asia, or even if you think about third world countries, maybe they will be leading the world into those technologies, and then they'll be kind of overtaking the Western world, and then we'll need to keep up with their pace. I don't know, but I think it's a really interesting time to be in the space.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I will contradict myself and say that on the other side, you mentioned Torer, we are seeing other use cases of gaming and other verticals of that use cases that people are working towards, and they're quite successful in terms of that adoption. And actually, as you've mentioned, and we've seen it, for instance, another example that comes to my mind is the Starbucks. For instance, they are using the technology as the underlying technology. It's only on the back end, I would say, and the front end and the UX that we've mentioned is basically, it's the same user experience, but they are benefiting from the technology, which is in the background. And yeah, hopefully, as you've said, we will see more and more of it. We're coming to an end, and to wrap up the podcast, we have a small thing that we are doing 5 questions in 5 minutes or less.
It's always the same thing with these podcasts. Like, I've done a few of them. It's always like we're coming to an end. I have a few questions. You have 30 seconds to answer the question. What's top of mind? Okay, let's go for it. That's it.
Actually, it's a good feedback. I'm listening to quite a few, and I didn't.
No, I like it. I'm saying it as a positive.
No, all good. Feedback is always.
I came prepared.
Sorry?
I came prepared.
You came prepared.
I said I came prepared.
All right. So I guess the first question, if you could give your 24-year-old self one book, what would it be?
24?
Just an age, an early age.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like 7 years ago. I don't know what I would tell him to read. I'll say, even though I read it at the time, Atlas Shrugged is one of the books that really changed my point of view. And I think it's actually good context to what's happening today in Israel in terms of what's happening in the country. A really, really interesting book, more relevant than ever.
What's your favorite DAO?
My favorite?
Yep.
My favorite DAO, you said?
Yep.
Favorite DAO? I don't know if I have a favorite DAO. Who's the last one I've interacted with that was cool? I think Aragon. Pretty cool.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Besides finance, which interest you're most excited about?
Politics.
Politics. All right.
Yeah.
I was expecting something that is related to somehow to Web3, but all right. I'll take it.
I say finance is Web3. That's why
all right.
it was part of it.
All right. What's your favorite go-to place for checking Web3 stuff?
Which I've got this newsletter that was really good. I'm going to recommend it. Let me find the name. I usually, when you sign up to all these newsletters, and some of them are just like total bullshit. That's the quote.
But at least you found some of them, maybe one of them useful.
Yeah, no. So this week in fintech has all the fintech and also some Web3 news. I really like it. That's like tweets and stuff like that. So definitely worthwhile signing up to.
All right, we'll put it in the show notes below. Final question, I guess. What should we expect seeing Tres.finance 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I think that when you look at the financial stack, because crypto will, we will see more adoption among Web2 companies. When you think about your financial stack as a company, And when you start a company, you'll have a lawyer, you'll have an accounting firm, and you have all kinds of software. A must-have software will be Tres to manage all your Web3 financial data, track all your positions, all your movements. It'll be an essential part of how companies operate. So I think it will be a huge company with tens, if not hundreds, of employees and leading the market.
Amazing. Where can people find you, regardless, when maybe they want to work for you, maybe they want to communicate and follow more about yourself, maybe they want to become a customer and use your services, where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So on our website, Tres.finance, you can schedule a demo. The person who's giving all the demos today is myself, so you get to meet me face to face. If you just want to reach out, LinkedIn, just type in Tal Zackon, CK. That's my name on LinkedIn, and on Twitter it's the same. I usually tweet in Hebrew about politics, so I'm not quite sure it'll be that interesting for some of the listeners here. But yeah, always happy to hear from people in the space, and feel free to reach out.
Amazing. Tal, thank you very much. Thank you for anyone that
Cool. Cheers, mate.
See you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.